afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to those who have stayed on the line with us through all the sessions today. And to those just joining on behalf of the Elsevier South Africa team, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all to this year's Library Connect. We hoped that this event would have been in person, but we are really happy that you've joined us for this digital experience. My name is Daneshri Mutli. I'm the customer consultant for Elsevier. Joining me today are my colleagues John Sturley, who is the account manager for Elsevier South Africa, Lucia Scumbi, senior customer consultant for research intelligence, and Dion Lubber, solutions sales manager for research intelligence. I just have a few notes for you before we begin. I really encourage you to use the Q&A box throughout the session if you have any questions for the speaker. The questions will be addressed in the last 15 minutes of the session, and we will endeavor to answer as many as we can. Okay, we will be having 3 sessions tomorrow as well, and we have 15-minute breaks in between the sessions. We really encourage you to please tell your colleagues about the Library Connect, and if they haven't registered, registration is still open. So we hope to see you in tomorrow's sessions as well. Okay, even for tomorrow, it will be the same link for all 3 sessions. So you can choose to stay on for the entire 3 sessions, or you can exit and rejoin. The recording of the presentations for today, as well as the slides of the presentations, will be available on our online platform tomorrow, and they will be available for 3 days for downloads. Okay, when you have a moment, we do encourage you to visit our virtual exhibition stands. And once you are there, you can get more information about the Elsevier product portfolio. Okay. If you'd like to view the speaker on today's session, please select View, which is on the top right-hand corner of your screen, and select Side-by-Side Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, which is Katie Bircher. Katie is currently the publisher for STEM textbooks with Elsevier, responsible for market-leading texts in engineering, computing, mathematics, and more, from imprints such as Academic Press, Morgan Kaufman, Butterworth Heinemann, with 15 years of publishing experience. Katie is passionate about enabling authors and educators to provide high-quality content to the next generation of science and technology professionals. She's also an avid runner, and she resides outside Boston, Massachusetts, and with her husband and her 2 young daughters. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. And can you see my slides?
Yes, we are able to see your presentation.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So I'll dive right in. So this is Katie Bircher. I'm publisher, as you said, for STEM textbooks here at Elsevier. And I want to thank you so much for joining the session today. First, just a quick word about me and my group. As was mentioned, I'm located here in our Cambridge, Massachusetts office, and I live outside of Boston. Although, like many folks, I am home-based these days, and so happy to invite you into my home. I've been in publishing about 15 years, and about half of those I've spent here at Elsevier. My team works with experts around the globe to develop and publish market-leading texts across many different STEM areas. We publish in the imprints that were mentioned as well, and you'll see them here on the slide. You'll hear me say textbook a lot today, probably because that is my personal remit, and it is something I'm very passionate about. I come from a family of teachers and educators, librarians as well. My grandmother was a librarian, so just grew up in this world of books, and always, was shown through example that books are really the tools that can take you where you want to go. And I like to think that I have some impact on that in my role now. We create the books that train future scientists and professionals, and I think that our world could use all the educated folks it can get right now. But the point is that, this content supports students and researchers to fully understand an area's foundational principles, as well as the real-world applications and implications, and that goes beyond just textbooks. It runs a full gamut across many different kinds of publications that we offer. So for the next session, I'll be speaking about the content that we publish here at Elsevier across that range, supporting undergraduate, graduate, and beyond. From our trusted textbooks, our robust encyclopedias, our reference monographs, all the materials that give a base layer of information that are valuable to individuals, whether they're embarking on a new course of study or working on a research project that might have some interdisciplinary elements, just for examples. So today, I'll speak a little bit about what that foundational content looks like. I'll touch on some insights from our usage data for this type of content in South Africa specifically. I will highlight some examples from our library of engineering titles. And I'll share a couple stories from other universities who have had great success with our educational content. And then we will have some time for questions as well. I'd also like to say that as librarians, it's likely that some of the slides I'm showing today will be slides you've seen before from some of my colleagues, but I'll be speaking a bit more about the content behind the platform from my editorial viewpoint, so hopefully it won't be repetitive. So STEM educational content on ScienceDirect. First, I just want to acknowledge the current global environment. Of course, distance learning, remote learning, it's really top of mind right now. So many institutions have had to move to or prepare backup plans for fully online instruction or a hybrid model, with students and faculty's access to resources just vastly decreased while they are off campus. Students, faculty, librarians, as well as publishers, we are adjusting to this new and evolving reality. Here at Elsevier, we are striving to support educational content needs through our broad and deep library on ScienceDirect. And here's how our teams aim to do that. Relevant content for the right reader level, trustworthy content that is highly discoverable through our ever-improving platform, and access options based on user need. So if you've heard any of my colleagues speak about the totality or the range of our offerings, you may have seen this diagram or something like it before. It's a very popular graphic internally because it does such a great job summarizing and organizing what I'm calling here the continuum of our resources across product types and reader levels. Of course, most people are very familiar with the top of the pyramid, our research supporting journal and high-level series and monograph publications. We also have a very useful wealth of content that I want to highlight today, starting with that orange stripe across the base or middle, almost the middle of the pyramid, and moving down to the bottom. So just to get a little closer to that, because I know it's difficult to read. It's still a little bit small, but hopefully you can see. I want to take a minute to describe each of these three stripes, these three content types, because these represent many, if not most or all, of our most highly used content on ScienceDirect. First, in that orange layer between monographs and what we consider true textbooks are what we call text reference hybrids. Now, this isn't a phrase I was familiar with before I joined Elsevier, so I'll explain it a bit in case it's new to anyone else here. This is how we describe titles that really straddle two worlds, that of the advanced student and the researcher, so especially the early career researcher. These books may be appropriate for an advanced or graduate level course, for instance, or they might be equally likely to be consulted by a researcher whose background is in one area, but who is working on some interdisciplinary research outside his or her immediate expertise, or maybe it's just, you know, they need a refresher, or they need a guidebook to the current research, that sort of thing. So they need something more than an undergraduate textbook, but still need that foundational review of the topic. It might supplement the primary literature, make sense of it, and put it into context. Moving down the triangle then is the textbook layer, or the true textbook layer, you might say. It's a bit more self-explanatory. These are our offerings that are typically undergraduate level, rich with pedagogy, things like worked examples, chapter problems, external instructor resources, and they map directly to a common course in the curriculum. While we have more monographs than textbooks, textbooks are our highest used standalone books. These include best-selling titles with globally renowned authors we are so fortunate to get to work with, and again, to help share their expertise with the next generation of scientists and researchers. These books provide an introduction to a subject that should guide a reader through the information in an accessible, cohesive way. And finally, that bottom layer is the major reference works, as it says there. Another term you might be well familiar with, but I had always heard these called encyclopedias, sometimes handbooks, in my pre-Elsevier publishing experience. These are typically multi-volume compendiums of information on a subject, so great for anyone looking for a slice of information, a quick overview, a quick definition, a starting point to learn more. I don't think anyone is reading a volume from one of these sets cover to cover. I could be wrong, but they offer a great basis of introduction at the reader's fingertips. So I won't go into this slide in detail, but just to show those same content types with some metrics about what we have to offer in each category. I want to call out that these 250 textbooks that are, have this PNC designation, if you can see my cursor, that is pick and choose on Science Direct. It's about half of our textbooks are available this way. These are our top titles, our top textbooks on the platform. And we have almost an equal amount, as I say, of valuable textbooks that are embedded in what we call the subject or book collections as well. And just to illustrate, these are our top 10 titles by usage globally. All of the top 10 are the foundational content types that I have just described. You have a reference work, text ref hybrids, and textbooks. Now you might be looking at this slide and doing the math and saying, Katie, that's not 10 books. There are only 8 covers here. Well, you can see that this third title in the top row, again, if you can see my cursor, that's Stormy Attaway's MATLAB. This title has 3 editions in the top 10, so it alone is 30% of our top 10 titles by usage. It really is just an incredible, reader-friendly, and much beloved book. Just to highlight that one. And one feature to Science Direct that you don't see on the content pyramid that I showed, that I do want to mention, is the topics pages. If you aren't familiar, these are AI-driven landing pages for key concepts or topics, which provide a rich summary for users. So the example here on the left-hand side, I'm reading a journal article in neuroscience, but maybe I'm not a neuroscientist. Maybe I'm a medicinal chemist working on something related to the brain, or maybe I'm a student working on a paper or research project. For some reason, I'm reading this article. And I'm looking at this word and, okay, I just don't know what it means. Alternatively, maybe I'm, reading something else or talking about something else, and I'm Googling the word amygdala. I just need, again, I need a refresher. I need a quick explanation. So that this hyperlink here or a Google search might bring me to this page. The topics page, like many others, it has synthesized the definition. It has included some background information, lots of related terms, little snapshots of additional background or additional research. It gives me some more references or additional readings to go to learn more. These topics pages, they add this additional layer to our resources on ScienceDirect. And to me, it's a case of the whole, or in this combined summary, being even more valuable than the sum of its parts. It pulls key points from our library and also serves to connect the materials for a reader to determine how they can get what they need or where to explore next as needed. These pages are not exclusively, but heavily derived from our textbook and encyclopedia content in particular, because those titles provide such accessible, succinct explanations and definitions. They really lend themselves to being pulled out in this way and to giving users an introduction and a companion to, as well as this roadmap into more advanced content. So probably enough about the different types of content. I want to talk a bit about how we know that this content is so useful, which is by the insights that we are able to gain from usage data. What users are accessing, downloading, where they're not able to access, they're getting turnaway information, and so on. We review this information as well as market feedback, book feedback, research trends, enrollment data. It's part of this whole picture that we look at to ensure on the editorial side that what we are publishing is what our customers need. So a very data-driven approach here. In the early days of the pandemic, we and of course many other publishers and education providers, we saw the sudden shift into lockdown and the rise of remote learning, its impact on access, which is really unprecedented. And this upheaval of moving everything online with almost no notice. I heard stories, we were contacted with stories about students and even professors, packing up so suddenly from their dorm rooms and campus offices and going to be with family or, going to be in a safe area, that they left all of their required course materials behind. And I imagine as librarians, you have all heard similar stories. And worked with folks on getting, what they need. Very early on, once the magnitude of this shift became obvious, it was clear that we had something that could really help people. And so we made our most popular textbooks available on ScienceDirect. That's that list of pick and choose titles we saw earlier, about 256 in the summer titles. We made those open to anyone who had any kind of ScienceDirect subscription. So anyone who had any kind of ScienceDirect access in their library now also had those top textbooks. And suddenly we saw the usage skyrocket. So not just of textbooks, though of course that was a major source of the increase, but it elevated usage of other content types as well. So this tells us this content was always incredibly useful to our customers, and even more so in concert with the rest of our library. And giving it during this critical period was as useful as we hoped it would be, so much so that we actually extended that program some additional months through August 31st. So this snapshot is specific to South Africa textbook usage during that period and the period leading up. I know this slide is a bit difficult to read, but because of the size. But on the left-hand side, this graph here, you can see the spike of green usage. That is the gratis or free usage during the open textbook program. You can see that it began right about here and really took off. And it continued to be useful, through the typical and off cycle for the academic calendar there in South Africa. So we can start to learn more about user needs accordingly. We also have here the top used titles in the middle section of the slide. This is extremely useful to understand what subject areas and topics were the most relevant, and then, again, enabling us on the publishing side to ensure that we are revising what's most needed you know, in a timely manner, that we're seeking related content to fill any gaps we might have, to support learning, and so on, to ensure that what we are doing is giving students and researchers what they need and keeping up with evolving trends. My colleagues also very kindly pulled some additional insights for me to speak to here. Again, these views are specific to South Africa. You can see the book usage by subject on its own on the left. And on the right, you can see that they've added a layer of turnaway information. So as you can see, engineering is the top usage area in the country. And so I will give a little snapshot of some of our engineering content shortly. But you can see from the turnaway data on the right-hand side, that's telling a really valuable story as well. That for many other subject areas, it seems user journeys through that content, you know, were they not hitting turnaways, would be, you know, that much more, that much larger. So telling us, again, the story of how useful the content is or could be. And again, I realize this is almost impossibly small to read, but just a wealth of information here. These are the top titles by usage in South Africa on the left and by turnaways on the right. So really interesting to understand where those highest interests are, highest usefulness. And again, just to reiterate, many of the titles you see here, if not most, are reference works, textbooks, and hybrid text references. So moving right along, as mentioned, I want to give a quick snapshot of some top educational titles in engineering and show how the resources map to a curriculum. I won't spend too much time on this, but I wanted to give a really practical example. So here I have grabbed a sample undergraduate course list for one of the largest engineering tracks, mechanical engineering. The basis for this just happens to be from the University of Rochester in upstate New York. But it is fairly representative of how these programs typically progress. Of course, this is not comprehensive to all the courses a student will take as part of this major, or you know, the other course requirements outside of the engineering track that they will need to take. But again, it should be fairly representative. Just to give an example. So here on the left-hand side, we have our core texts that map to the major course areas. Then we have this layer of hybrid text reference books that take things to kind of, again, that next layer of application and real world. And you can see that you know, some of these are somewhat tangential to the mechanical engineering. They give that broader knowledge, that interdisciplinary approach that, you know, perhaps this student is taking an elective in polymer science or biomaterial science, and it will tie back into their major. We also have, again, those major reference works down here at the bottom. And I'd be remiss talking about Science Direct and Elsevier if I didn't mention journals in this as part of this continuum, going back to that pyramid that I showed early on. Whether you have students consulting primary literature for a course project or a research project, or you know, furthering their own understanding, reading, you know, recommended articles from a professor's you know, lecture notes or the like. Maybe they are entering a postgraduate track and taking more advanced courses and engaged more deeply in research project. Again, they are using this full continuum, this full breadth of content across our offerings from foundational through the advanced layers. And getting more out of each layer because of the environment that it lives in together. And moving on to some real world examples. I want to note that following on the heels of our open textbook program, and with the fall semester in flight right now here in the US, additional customer support and research is underway now. So that's just to say we expect to have more lessons learned and more case studies to share in the future. So definitely watch this space. In the meantime, I'd like to highlight a couple of related stories briefly. And these are both about smaller universities that are not those big research powerhouses that, you know, I imagine typically get access to everything. Both the schools I'm going to talk about are more education focused. And of course, Science Direct has always, and rightly so, been billed as this great research platform, which it of course is. And so these stories are about revealing this foundational layer that we've been talking so much about, that goes hand in hand with the research driving resources, as well as supporting this more student-focused use at these more student-focused universities, that you can see a little bit more clearly because of their focus. So first, a case study regarding topics pages. At Lafayette College, this is a prestigious liberal arts school in Pennsylvania. Professor Elaine Reynolds, she's a development partner with us here at Elsevier. She had the goal of improving students' ability to find, read, and understand original research, including strategies to consider, you know, the reliability of information as well as sources. So to look at those materials critically and really think about how trustworthy they are and how they can fit into this larger context. So she worked with a couple of her classes to understand what skills they came into the class with, what their kind of base of knowledge was, and then to introduce them to Science Direct topics as a starting point for their work. And they really saw the value through this exercise. These graphs here at the bottom, these are self-reported by the students. Their experience with Science Direct topics led to improved understanding of the concepts themselves, which of course for teaching staff, that's critical. But even more, it vastly increased the comfort level of reading primary literature, and gave them the information they needed when they needed it. As they went through reading articles, book chapters, all tied together by topics pages for a really comprehensive experience. So a really great pilot there and lots of great lessons learned. So my next story is about Wesleyan University. This one is close to my heart. It's actually pretty close to where I grew up here in Connecticut. This is again a small, highly ranked, liberal arts focused U.S. institution. It's about 3,000 students, undergraduate and graduate degrees, and they have a relatively small research output, but they have always been great journals users. They have started classes on campus for this semester at the end of August, but like so many others, they are preparing in case it becomes necessary to move fully online again. So our team heard from them their concerns about reducing costs without losing value. A little bit of what Dr. Daisy was speaking about earlier of shifting the resources where where can you save and where can you invest. So our team analyzed a ton of their historical information, their usage, their turnaways, their research profile on Scopus, which showed, they're really growing in neuroscience and in management and in medicine. And yet their usage as well as their turnaways and their output was all very much spread across a number of different areas. And you can see in those pie graphs, just how spread the usage is. There's no, one area that's, the focus of the entire institution, for instance. And looking at their turnaways, because of the diversity of student backgrounds, as well as across the number of majors that they offer, the turnaways were extremely high among foundational content. So giving all of those students kind of the same starting point, despite their widely disparate backgrounds. So accordingly, our team has provided them with multiple different options to fit their needs and their priorities, and really give or ensure that their students are given and their other users are given access to the most useful content for their needs going forward. So finally, I just want to highlight some resources you may already be aware of that we offer to help support customers through the COVID-19 crisis. From remote access to supporting science literacy, and also timely resources specifically for librarians. And with that, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today. I've gone a little quicker than I intended, so hopefully it all made sense. Thank you for attending. I hope it has been useful. And at this point, please let me know if you have any questions or comments. I'm happy to answer anything I can. And thank you again.